Cheers, guys. Epix here. Welcome to episode 14 of the VR show. Apologies, guys. There was no episode last week, and I would love to spin a tale about how rough real life has been, and it has, and it's had its share of drama, but that would not be quite the truth in terms of why I didn't have an episode last week, because the real truth, a slight bit murkier. It involves cinematic PlayStation VR and a certain title, but we'll get into that. Guys, lots to talk about to make up for last week. All in all, there was just a little bit of needing to pull myself away and chillax, and that's what I did, and I'm glad I did it to kind of recharge the energy levels. What does that mean in terms of news and current events? That there's a hell of a lot to talk about. Now, I just released the video on my thoughts on the Rift-2 cancellation. I'd had an earlier video that I set to private. I explained the why in that video. Go check that out if you're curious on my take on why the change in direction from Oculus/Facebook. That includes, of course, Brendan Reeves leaving the company. I touch on that as well. Lots, like I said, to talk about, though. Gaming news, hardware, software, just all kinds of VR stuff. Let's get into it, guys. In today's VR chat segment, we're going to calm things down a little bit because I touched on the Rift 2. We're going to touch on some other things, namely this game in cinematic mode, and my argument for using VR devices in cinematic/screen modes, even if the game doesn't support VR. Sometimes, and I think definitely that was the case here, it's good to play it that way as well. All right, guys, sit back, chillax. Let's take a look at these last few weeks' VR roundup. One of the issues with using 60 gigahertz wireless for virtual reality is that it's heavily dependent on line of sight. Anytime line of sight is broken, i.e. there's occlusion, etc., the signal degrades, resulting in either missed frames or heavily choppy ones. One of the ways around that is to use relay stations. Facebook earlier this year filed a patent for exactly that, a system they describe as being a wireless relay system designed to prevent loss of signal even when a user is out of range of the primary transmitter and receiver. That patent formally issued to Oculus last week. Finally, PIMAX making their pre-orders available online. This also includes pricing: the PIMAX 8K for $900 US, PIMAX 5K Plus $700 US, and the PIMAX 5K BE coming in at $1,000 US. They're also offering a few bundled items, including optical hand tracking modules for $170, and both the NVIDIA RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti for an additional price. All three of the headset's models can be extended with modules that PIMAX has talked about for the past few months, including wireless transmission, eye tracking, a scent module, a deluxe head strap, much like the HTC Vive one, albeit with better ergonomics and integrated audio, according to those who've tried it, although those last few don't appear to be currently available for pre-order on the website. Also missing any mention of the Steam VR tracking base stations or the company's knuckle-style controllers, which we'll take a look at in a few seconds in a separate story. This was an interesting story that hit my radar. Sony and Lenovo announcing that they have signed a mutual 2-year patent license agreement. It's going to allow Lenovo to base their future Mirage Solo VR headset off of the original PSVR's industrial OEM design. So again, Lenovo saying that they're going to use this for a future Mirage Solo VR headset. It's Unclear what Lenovo specifically wants from the Sony PlayStation design, but those who've tried the Sony PlayStation VR, I think most of us agree, it is a comfortable design, albeit a bit finicky getting the IPD in it, but absolutely a comfortable design. Another thing I've said from day one, there will be attrition. Companies will come and go. They will fall to the wayside. Not just games and experiences, but hardware companies, VR arcades. Well, another example of exactly that, IMAX shuttering their VR experience center in New York and stating no new VR investments for the year of 2019. No word on the other IMAX locations. So far, it appears they will survive, the majority of them, of course, in Asia. But for now, the VR Experience Center in New York being shuttered. There had been reports in the past about Apple possibly acquiring Leap Motion. Well, it looks like that was in fact the case, but the deal fell through ultimately. Apple, according to unannounced sources, saying that the deal fell through not because of the technology involved, but because of Leap Motion's co-founders. No further details given. I'll let you know as I find out more. If you'd been on the sidelines waiting to purchase a VR solution, specifically Sony PlayStation's VR solution, you might want to wait a little bit longer. In 3 weeks, Black Friday US specifically, Target is going to be reducing all of their PlayStation VR bundles by $100 US discount. Their Friday advert for the day detailing the Creed Rise to Glory and Superhot VR bundles, both regularly priced at $350 to be set down to $250 US, and the Doom VFR bundle and Astrobot Rescue Mission and Moss bundles priced at $200, although those don't include the PlayStation Move controllers. Now, considering you can get a 1 terabyte PlayStation 4 with Spider-Man at $200, you could essentially have everything required for a full console VR solution for under $500 US. Again, if you're a US citizen. Very, very cool. I'm going to go into detail on this on a standalone episode, a redo of the thoughts on the Rift 2 cancellation, but Oculus apparently planning a modest upgrade to the Rift. This is being named for now the Oculus Rift-S. Very much looks like it's going to get the HTC Vive Pro type treatment in that it'll include minor upgrades, things like resolution, and possibly some tracking enhancements as well. As there's more details, I'll let you guys know. I love stories like this involving the ability of VR to transform development and design. There was a case study published by Bell and HTC wherein Bell states that one of their helicopter designs, specifically the FCX-001, a chopper that normally takes 5 years to design, they were able to do it in a tenth of the time, basically 6 months, thanks to virtual reality. Now, they worked closely alongside a company called Sector 5 Digital. They specialize in 3D design and production. They were able to do the initial design in CAD and then transform that to VR via the Unity engine. Very, very freaking cool. That's the kind of benefit that, again, means VR, folks, isn't going anywhere. You know, the whole game side of it is a little slow. It's not selling as many units as we'd like. Don't think for a second VR's going anywhere. It's not. Tracking for a lot of the inside-out solutions, comes with its share of challenges and just concerns from Joe Public. Well, something to kind of put some of those concerns to rest. HTC, in a move to virtual reality developers, has opened up applications for their Vive Focus 6 Degree of Freedom controller dev kits. Now, they've also mentioned that the 6 Degree of Freedom tracking with the use of ultrasound and IMU sensor fusion is a capability of the dev kits, and that Focus will be able to track horizontal movements up to 180 degrees and vertical ones up to 140 degrees from up to 1 meter away. So definitely addressing some of the tracking concerns devs had with regards to occlusion and these units. Can't wait to see these in action. Palmer Luckey making a rather bold statement on his personal blog, saying that no imminent VR hardware is good enough to truly go mainstream, even at $0, saying that it's the experience that's ultimately going to sell VR, not the price. Now, I understand what he's saying. I don't quite agree. I do think price is a factor. There's definitely a fusion of the two, I think, that's ultimately going to be the recipe for success. In fact, I've said it before, I think it's really three variables. I think comfort, / aesthetics being the third, how it feels, because really the price can be as good as it wants, the experience as good as it wants. If you got something bulky and somebody doesn't want something bulky on their head, those first two won't mean a thing. So I think it's really kind of a trifecta of variables that ultimately will need to be addressed to truly make VR go mainstream. But I get the idea of what he's talking about. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this below. Now, I get into this a lot more in my standalone episode where I talk about Brendan Areeb's departure from Oculus Facebook, the Rift-2 going to the Rift-S, etc. But the Rift-S, which I personally feel was an appeasement product, or rather is an appeasement product, really is only going to see a minor bump up in resolution. So probably, roughly equivalent to what you get with the HTC Vive Pro, but on the Oculus side of things. Here's one of interest to developers for virtual reality games and experiences. One of the issues with long-standing programs like the commercial Maya or the open source free Blender is that neither has supported virtual reality. Well, until now, a Japanese startup named MARUI also developed a plugin by the same name for both of those programs to add VR support. They call that MARUI and Blender XR. It's a paid plugin, which is going to be $50 per month or lifetime use for $550 US. It's going to support Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and all Windows MR headsets. That's for MARUI. The Blender version supporting all of those, and the eye-tracking PC VR headset FOV Zero as well. One of the issues with 60 gigahertz for Wi-Fi VR, we talked about this a little bit earlier, is that while on paper the maximum theoretical bandwidth of 7 gigabits per second looks okay, that's not without having to rely on some compression in real world, development. You need some compression to be able to transmit the 2160 by 1200 90 hertz signal for the Vive, for example. There's going to come a time, like I said, for that future state, and I talk about this in the standalone episode, where foveated rendering with eye tracking is going to provide mutual benefit. Pair that with, a faster 60 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and you're getting that much closer to that ideal VR future state. Well, that new standard is around the corner. It's called 802.11ay. It's the successor to that 7 gigabit per second signal. This one providing a theoretical maximum of 40 gigabits per second. Again, 802.11ay. Qualcomm announcing that they have upcoming chipsets that are going to work with that new standard. Now, like I said earlier, that's great, but really using that in tandem with foveated rendering and eye tracking, that I think is the true kind of future state objective that the companies want to hit to truly give us that next gen VR. Here's a statement that belongs in the no shit Sherlock category. Vive Studios boss saying, "We need to get better at marketing VR content." You think? That's something I've been harping on for the last 2 years, and it's something I maintain. Marketing for virtual reality, in total has been absolutely frickin' abysmal, and anything they can do to improve that, and I guess that starts by acknowledging it's even an issue, so I suppose I should give them that as a good first step, is only going to benefit us. So we'll see what this leads to. Hopefully, some positive marketing for VR. In addition to the various HMD solutions, PIMAX also putting up on their website their controllers for order, paired with base stations for $300 US sometime next year, are these controllers. And now I got a little bit into hot water last time by insinuating that they were inspired by the VIVE wand and the touch controllers. Could someone who, felt that way, please, in the comment section below, try to tell me these don't look like Knuckles-inspired controllers? I'd love to hear your reasons for why they don't, because obviously I think they really do. Either way, that's not a bad thing. I like the Knuckle controllers. I'm excited about the PIMAX, and that includes trying controllers like this with said PIMAX. I had really hoped that the upcoming Borderlands 2 VR for PlayStation VR would allow us to use aim controllers, or at the very least, PlayStation Move controllers. Looks like that's not the case. There's some footage on Borderlands 2 VR featuring DualShock 4 for the gameplay. Still not convinced that's 100% what they're going to use, but definitely a strong indicator that they're going in that direction. Still, a game I'm excited about. It's going to hit PlayStation VR December 14th, and hopefully a PC version of that the following year. Now, I've talked at length about cockpit VR experiences being among some of the best in VR because they mimic what you're doing in real life. Likewise, I've wished that PlayStation VR would play host to some more simulator-style air combat games. I get that on a console, it's something you don't typically see. They tend to be more arcadey. Case in point, Ace Combat 7, which I'm still going to try. Sadly, DualShock 4 support is all that it provides, but looking and shaping up to be a pretty good-looking experience. If it's as good on screen in VR, I think it's going to be very, very immersive. It's going to hit PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and PC January 18th, 2019. And again, it's a limited VR mode exclusive to PlayStation VR. Still, can't wait to try it. One of the better Google Daydream games now available on both the Oculus Go and Gear VR. White Elk Studios, the company behind Eclipse Edge of Light, saying that their game available on the Oculus Go and Gear VR for $9.99 US. Eclipse is a first-person sci-fi adventure-style game. You find yourself stranded after a crash landing on a mysterious planet and set about surviving using a jetpack and full locomotion. There's a game coming to Steam Early Access in December called Blade and Sorcery. The trailer up right now that you're seeing in the background, very much the style of combat that I said, over the last couple of years would be coming to VR. And what I was talking about was the beauty of VR in that it allows developers, really sky is the limit, to use the full range of natural motion, true physics for objects, etc. Really, it's up to the developers how intense they want to get with the hitboxes. Combat eventually in VR could almost be made lifelike, and certainly Blade and Sorcery sounds like a very small but step in that direction. So again, that coming to early access in December. The title featuring a few maps, multiple weapon types like swords, daggers, shield, axes, spears, and bows. Again, the emphasis from the company on accurate physics and very, very tight hitboxes. There's avatar customization, jumping, kicking, running, free locomotion, as well as the ability to mod the game data. Very cool, very much a title I'll keep an eye on. Okay, had to talk about this one. Obviously, I'm a retro gamer fanatic. I love emulation, old systems, computers, consoles, etc. Earlier this year, there was a product that was reported on called 3D NES VR, which is essentially an emulator that converts certain titles, platform titles, into a kind of a quasi 3D that you can experience in VR. Now, they're making this available as a free demo, currently supporting Super Mario Bros., Circus Charlie, Elevator Action, and a bunch of other games. You can check out the full list on that. And in the demo that you see playing right now, Metroid, which looks really freaking fantastic. I'm going to try this out this weekend and fill you guys in on what the experience was like. But definitely something up my alley, as I love classic retro gaming and, of course, virtual reality. All right, guys, let's slow things down a little bit. Let's chat us some cinematic mode / big screen VR mode, whatever you want to call it. What I mean by that is, even if a game doesn't specifically support virtual reality, you can play it in kind of that theater mode, the same mode that you can watch videos in via your HMD, whether it's, PlayStation VR, Rift, Vive, all of them have a type of big screen mode. The PlayStation VR, no exception. I had heard about how good the mode was from the person who reviewed it, reviewed Shadow of the Colossus, and did the same thing with Red Dead Redemption. So I had to try it myself, because I was prepared, guys, when I purchased this game, because I loved GTA 5. Trevor, best villain all time, in my opinion, plus a Canadian actor to boot. But Red Dead Redemption 2, I was expecting greatness, and I got it. And even more when I tried cinematic mode. It is absolutely stellar. So what this game does so well, and I'm not going to get into the crazy details on that. This is a VR channel after all. But it does a great job at making you feel like you're part of this Western movie book experience. You literally feel like you've been plunked and dropped into a Western. A Clint Eastwood, The Good, Bad, the Ugly, etc. Yul Brynner, you are there on a horse in a Western. When you kick that up a notch by trying it in cinematic mode via your PlayStation VR, it's pretty damn awe-inspiring. It's not VR, it's not even close, but in my opinion, it's an innately better experience than simply playing it pancake mode on a pancake monitor. That much better. You have this feeling, and it's hard to describe until you try it. Some people kind of think, it's just like sitting in a theater, as if the theater screen was your gaming mode, right? Your game screen. Yes, that's part of it, but it goes way beyond that. It taps into your senses in a whole different way than simply replicating what it would feel like to sit in a theater. Because when you're sitting there in VR with the PlayStation on your head playing this game, it's almost like a sensory overload. You are way more intimate with the game than as if you were in a theater. If you were in a theater, you wouldn't kid yourself for 1 second and think, wow, it doesn't feel like I'm in a theater. You're aware of it, you know it, the atmosphere, everything tells your senses you're sitting in a big auditorium playing a video game on a big movie screen. When you use cinematic mode with the PlayStation VR, it cuts all of that off and it takes just the big screen experience and the benefits of wrapping sound, wrapping visuals to your extreme periphery, and just puts that in overdrive. It is nothing short of stunning. Again, I love this game. That helps. If you weren't a fan of this game, though, I think you'd still appreciate the aspects of how much more immersive it feels to use Sony's cinematic mode to play this game and other games. There's a lot of games where this would work really well as well. In fact, I want to go back and try GTA 5 using cinematic mode, but absolutely can recommend it. If you've got this game on a PlayStation and you have PlayStation VR, give it a try. You will not be disappointed. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Like I said, a packed episode, so much. Timestamps as usual in the description below. If you like this video, guys, please hit that like button. And if you've dropped by 1, 2, 3 videos, you like what you see, please consider subscribing, hit that notification bell, and welcome to the VR Show channel. Guys, as always, cheers.